You know, for the longest time, we've thought of crying as just a sign of weakness, or maybe just an overflow of feelings. But what if it's way more than that? What if it's a biological function, a social superpower, and a chemical release system all rolled into one? Okay, let's get into it because science is just now starting to unravel the incredible mystery packed into a single teardrop.
So, yeah, that brings us to the big question that's going to drive this whole explainer. Why do we actually cry? And what are our tears really trying to tell us? And maybe, more importantly, the people around us? Turns out, the answer is a lot more complex and, frankly, cooler than you might think.
All right, first things first. We have to get on the same page about something really important. Not all tears are created equal. Your body is actually making tears all the time for very different reasons, and scientists have neatly sorted them into three completely distinct types.
Okay, check this out. It's kind of like your eyes have a toolbox. First, you've got your basal tears. These are the workhorses, the ones constantly on duty, keeping your eyes lubricated and protected. Then you've got reflex tears. Think of them as the emergency response team, flushing out junk like onion fumes or a piece of dust. But the ones that are the real mystery, the ones we're going to dig into, are the emotional tears. Most researchers think these are uniquely human.
So what's the deal with these emotional tears? I mean, what's the point? For a very long time, even some of the smartest people on the planet were totally stumped. And the journey from thinking they were useless to seeing their hidden power is, well, it's pretty amazing.
And get this. This is the old way of thinking, summed up in one word. Charles Darwin himself, the Charles Darwin, basically just shrugged and called emotional tears purposeless. It's kind of wild to think it's one of the few things where modern science has completely moved on from where he started.
And here's where that old idea gets totally flipped on its head. Far from being purposeless, we now think of crying as a kind of social superpower. It's this incredibly powerful nonverbal signal that says, hey, I'm vulnerable right now. And what does that do? It brings people closer, it builds empathy, it basically triggers others to want to help. It's a fundamental tool for human connection.
This quote from Dr. Lauren Bilesma just hits the nail on the head. So here's the kicker. The real magic of crying might not be what it does for the person who's crying, but how it changes the behavior of everyone who sees them cry. It's an unbelievably effective way to communicate without saying a single word.
But hold on, the social stuff is only half the story. There's another really fascinating theory that looks inward, at the actual chemistry of our tears. The big idea here is that crying might be your body's way of literally washing stress away.
Which, it leads you to this question, right? Is a good cry basically an emotional detox? Some really groundbreaking research by a biochemist named Dr. William Frey suggested that maybe weeping is a way for our bodies to excrete things, to literally flush out chemicals that build up when we're stressed.
And here's the proof in the pudding. When scientists actually analyzed emotional tears, they found they had way more of certain hormones and proteins than, say, reflex tears from cutting an onion. We're talking about things like enkephalin, which is a natural painkiller, and ACTH, a major stress indicator. The theory is that by crying, you're literally letting this stuff out.
Okay, but we've got to pump the brakes just a little here. It's really important to add this note of caution. As compelling as this whole crying detox idea is, and as cool as those first findings were, this is one of those areas in science that needs more research. It's a really promising theory, for sure, but it's not quite settled science yet. Now, this whole chemical story leads us straight to one of the most beautiful and one of the most misunderstood ideas about tears that you have almost definitely seen floating around the internet. So yeah, it's time for a little myth busting.
You've seen the pictures, right? These gorgeous, intricate, almost snowflake-like images claiming that a tear of grief looks totally different from a tear of joy or a tear from an onion. It's a really poetic idea, but is it true?
Well, to get to the truth, you have to go right to the source. These images all come from a project called The Topography of Tears by an amazing photographer, Rosalind Fisher. And as she herself explained it, her project was always meant to be art, not science. It was her way of exploring her own emotions visually.
So let's just lay it out nice and simple. The viral claim you see everywhere is that a specific emotion creates a specific, unique-looking tear. But the reality, the way a tear looks when it dries has to do with a whole bunch of different variables.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The final image you see depends on the tear's exact chemistry, sure, but also on how it was dried on the slide, the settings on the microscope, the settings on the camera, and even the artistic choices the photographer made. It's not some repeatable scientific formula.
And here it is, the final nail in the coffin for this myth, and it comes straight from the artist's own experience. She found that even tears from the exact same crying session could look completely different from one another. So the idea that each emotion has a unique fingerprint, while it sounds beautiful, just isn't the case. The beauty is actually in the randomness, not in a pattern.
So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're looking at tears through the lens of a sociologist, a biochemist, or an artist, you kind of land on the same truth. Crying isn't simple. It's not a weakness. It's just, as Rosalind Fisher put it so perfectly, the evidence of our inner life overflowing its boundaries. It's this primal language, this biological release, and this incredible bridge that connects all of us. Makes you wonder, what do your tears say about you?